where we celebrate the power of words and the beauty of storytelling. Join us every week. We have conversations with authors and small business owners. We have exciting lineup of guests who will take us on a literary journey like no other. Join us as we delve into the world of authors and small business owners from diverse backgrounds and cultures, each bringing their own unique perspective and voice to the table. From thrilling memoirs to captivating fiction and business startups, our guests will share their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs, offering us a glimpse into the rich tapestry of human experience. Immerse yourself in the magic of words and discovery as we explore the global literary landscape together. So grab a cup of tea, cozy up by the fire, and join us on this adventure of a lifetime.
Hello, welcome back to the Hollis Chapman Show. Ken came through, okay? And again, some of the tech problems could have been on my end. As I said, my computer this morning, it got a mind of its own and rebooted itself. But Ken was persistent, he got through. Okay, a little bit about Ken. Like I was saying earlier, he was born into an Italian-American family. His first introduction to anything Italian was food. Nothing wrong with that. And as an early age, Ken developed an interest in engineering and technology. He was an avid ham radio operator, became one of the first to communicate with others by bouncing radio signals off the moon. How cool is that, right? That hobby paved the way to a long career in telecommunication industry. He must be going insane with communication today. Telecommunication, the phones are that, the phones that we carry around now is just basically computers in our pockets. It's just amazing stuff. So he saw it as it got from the new stage to where it is now. We're going to ask him about that. Let's welcome to the show our special guest, Ken Tentarelli.
For inviting me.
Oh, thank you very much for joining us, sir. I'm saying your story is unbelievable. The Blackest times, the plague, COVID. It's a great conversation. I haven't talked about COVID in a long time, so this will be really good. So tell us more about yourself and your latest book, sir.
Okay, sure. As you said, I was in communications. I started my career early designing telephone systems back in the old days when, well, maybe not dial systems, but touchtone. And the end of my career, I worked on the internet. And technology is a great field to work in because it changes constantly. There are always fresh challenges. But it's been said that engineers get so engrossed in technical matters that they neglect the humanities like art and history. And I have to admit, that was largely true in my case. I had no interest in history at all until my wife and I began traveling in Europe. My latest book, The Blackest Time, as you said, is a novel set during the time of the Black Plague. If you look on Amazon or something, there are many nonfiction books written about the plague, but as far as I can tell, there hadn't been any novels set during the time of the Great Plague. And that's a little surprising to me because I found the actions of the people and their resilience during that time to be inspiring. And it's their story that I wanted to try and capture in The Blackest Time.
That's wonderful that you say that because this is, the Black Plague is actually the first time, I'm 65 years old, the first time I really researched it. And to me, it was like, I feel like an idiot. But it's a point where you have parallels between the the Black Plague and COVID. Okay, so I live in Tempe, Arizona. I'm about 2 blocks away from the ASU campus, the biggest campus in the country. And when COVID hit and ended the shutdown, it was like a ghost town here. Very weird. Now, the reason why I stayed, just had my head on straight was the internet. I can communicate with people, stuff like that, let people know how I was doing, stuff like that. But back in the day like that, it's strange, right? How did they persevere? How did they communicate? Share some of that story.
Okay, well, let's see. If we compare, for example, COVID with the Black Plague, if I think back a couple of years to when COVID started, we didn't know what caused it. We didn't know whether it came from a lab in China or a food market. We didn't know how it spread, whether it spread through physical contact or maybe through the air. And we had people proposing a bunch of different cures for COVID. They were all almost ineffective, and some were even dangerous. So we didn't even know what to believe. And try to think how people reacted at that time. Even
Yeah.
before we were mandated lockdowns, people were afraid to be near each other. We uh, we had packages delivered by delivery people rather than going to stores. Well, it was similar in Florence in the 1300s. People reacted in different ways. They had different ideas about what caused the Black Plague, or they called it the Black Death, and they
Mm.
tried different ways to avoid it. But other than isolation, most of the things they tried weren't successful at all. It might help if I put the two plagues or the two pandemics in perspective. COVID killed about 7 million people worldwide, and about a million of those were in the US. We don't have exact counts for the Black Plague because it happened so long ago, but estimates are it killed between 30 and 50 million people. That's a huge number. That was about 40% of the population of Europe at the time. In Florence, where my book takes place, about 60% of the population was lost. And in Florence, the government did make a pretty good effort to try and get a good count of the number of deaths. Um, and
Mm.
despite the huge numbers that got killed, it happened in a short time, a span of only about 6 months. The plague reached Florence in March of the year 1348, and by October of that same year, it ended. Now,
Wow.
it moved around Europe, so in any one place, it was there for only a short time, but it was traveled around Europe for several years. Um, my book, The Blackest Time, is a novel. It's not a history. The Black Plague and the famine that comes before it are the backdrop of the book, but the real story is about the people at that time. And as bad as it was, they managed to find a way through it, and it's their story that I felt needed to be told.
Ken, how did it start, and then how eventually did it end? I mean, was the medicine finally catch up to it, and they give you the medicine to take? Like I said, we get the COVID shot. That's how we get handle it. How do they handle it? How do they do it? Because again, they didn't go on the internet and kind of figure things out. You didn't go, didn't do the TV thing. How did it happen, and how did it end,
Okay,
medical wise?
sure. I can get into this how the doctors try and treat it a little bit later, but to answer your question, um, it ended because eventually the government started. Well, let me back up. They believed that it was caused by bad air, that the air was somehow contaminated, and they wanted to get the air to smell better. And the way they wanted to do that was they introduced hygienic um, behaviors. In particular, the government quarantined people. They started cleaning the streets. They every night they would send out people to clean the streets because there was so much trash that had been disposed of in the streets. And butchers, they made them dispose of all their rotten meat. Now, they thought they were curing bad air, but with the result of that, as we know today, really what happened was the rats were the ones that were feeding on all that trash and rotten meat. And when they cleaned all that up, the rat population shrunk, and that's what ended up curing the plague. They
Gotcha.
didn't know that at the time, of course.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, how I mean, one of the questions I say to you is how did people in Florence deal with fear? I saw I saw fear here with the COVID, but how do they deal with fear, loss, and uncertainty during the Black Plague time? In a sense where they couldn't sit down at their table and figure out online what was going on. So how do they deal with it in a social setting, or talk to their family? Hey, are you okay? And this and that. To me, a big thing went around was we put pictures on our window saying, okay, Hollis is okay. He's got a smiley face on his window. They gave people out there, they knew that I was okay. And that went around for a while when it got really bad. We couldn't go to the gyms, you couldn't do things. How do they do it back then? How do they communicate without going out and talking to people and facing people?
Well, those are good questions. I give you a couple of examples, probably the best way to do it. as I said, we know today that the plague was caused